How's it going, everyone? Thank you for checking into today's video. If you guys are new here, I am a producer. I make beats. I am an audio engineer as well. And today you're going to be clicking on this video to get some basic tips on how to mix your beats. I'm going to let you guys know right now I'm not a professional audio engineer by any means. I have been doing this for a long time, and I've learned a lot on my journey, and I have a lot of tips to share. And I'm just going to kind of break down the way that I do things. It's very simple. I don't go too far. I don't overdo this and that. I like everything just to be cleaned up, straight to the point, and simple, but sounding good. Before we get started, if you guys could go check out my social medias below, I have the ad down there. It's the same on all platforms. Other than that, we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to go ahead and play this beat really quick. I got this loop from Chef 9 the God. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and play this for you, and so you can get an idea of what this beat sounds like.
Trophy, turn this shit.
Alright, so right away we're gonna go ahead and start off with the melody. So I'll show you really quick. I broke this up 4 different ways, basically like an intro, and then an intro to like the verses, and then like a verse progression, and then there's 2 different parts of the hook. So it kind of just progresses to change it up so it doesn't all sound the same. So I have the melody split up with the first, second, and third insert. So, and then all the plugins I used were all third-party plugins. FabFilter to be specific. So I started off with the multi-band compressor. From 0 to 100, I took out all the frequencies because that's all sub-bass. There's no reason for that to be in the melody. And then in the mid-lows here, or low-mids, I did a pretty good reduction, pretty good compression. Because, I mean, a lot of the body is down in here, but it can get really muddy if you have too much of it in there with the 808, because coincidentally, a lot of the body of the 808 can be in this range as well. Like there's like the sub bass, and then there's like the body that makes it so you can hear it, you know, like off phones and stuff like that, computer speakers. And then I took an EQ, and then I just did more reductions in the low mids, and then I did a little bit of boost in the highs. And the one thing I really like about FabFilter's plugins is you can actually solo out specific frequency ranges, so you can hear exactly what you need to reduce. So what I did was I just kind of looked for frequencies that were peaking out and just really hard on the ears, but I'll show you an example. And after listening back to this, I think I do have a little bit more adjusting to do on the EQ on the melodies, just like a little bit on the mid highs to highs. And then other than that, I just added an RC20, nothing crazy with that. I just put like an echo on it. And then for the other parts of the melodies, I just copy and pasted that all those presets over and just tweaked them as needed, because certain parts of the melody do have more high end, so I just tweaked it as needed. So starting off with the crash, and you're probably wondering how I have this memorized, but I have the same layout for every single beat. So all the drums, I always keep them in a specific order, so that's how I have it memorized without like, the actual like insert being labeled. So first I got the crash. Oh, I gotta click over. So all I really did was I just boosted the highs in the stock EQ on the side here. And I actually learned that from Young Chop. I was watching an interview. Someone was asking what he did with his drums, and he said that's all he ever did was just to give it some, you know, like a nice high-end crisp. So that's usually what I do for a lot of the drums. If you wanted to get really specific with it, you can pull up an EQ and start removing, you know, sweeping through here and removing as much as you can until it starts sounding tinny. I just find it unnecessary when a lot of it is going to be just in this range. It's not really going to interfere with the kick 808 or melody, which is where a lot of the muddiness happens. So I usually don't get too crazy with a lot of the drums. Next I have the snare, or sorry, not the snare, the kick. Basically what I did here was I pulled up an EQ. I usually cut off from 35 to 50 depending on the kick. It's all circumstantial. Everything's by ear too. And then I did a drop here. This is where there's sub bass coming through. And the reason why I did a reduction here was just to pull out some of that so it doesn't clash as much with the 808 because it can start sounding really muddy. And I found it sounds a lot cleaner when you actually reduce some of the sub bass out. And I just did a little increase where there's actual kick, you know, to bring some more kick to it. Reduce some of the sub bass, but put more punch to it. And then I just put a soft clipper on there. The 808. So all I did here was I cut off at 25. I recommend cutting off at 25 to 30. Anything below that you can't hear anyways. There's no point having it. And then I did a pretty decent reduction here. And I found a lot of punch coming through on the 808 here. And I wanted to reduce that to leave room for the kick. And then I also cut off a lot of the high end. So a lot of the distortion was in this range. But I just found it to be really muddy in the mix with the melody. And I also did the same thing with the kick. I don't know if I mentioned that, but there was some high end in the kick. A lot of kicks do have high end like frequencies that go all the way up here just to give it some more like color. But sometimes it can get a little too clashy with everything else. Next I have the snare. Now on a usual day, I usually don't do this much to my snare, but I basically just gave it some high end to give it some little bit of a crisp sound. I did take out some of the low end on the snare because sometimes it does have some weird low end that'll clash, so I just took out some of the low end. Compressed it, which I usually don't do. I just compressed it a little bit just to get some volume. Threshold at 6, ratio at 3, attack and release quick, and then I added some gain, soft clipped it, and then added some reverb. So nothing too crazy there. Usually it really depends, but I really don't like compressing my drums, honestly, but I made it sound good. I just had to listen and do a lot of experimenting with it. Next is the hi-hats. And I don't know why, but I compressed the hi-hats. I can't tell you why. I just felt like trying something different with this beat, and that's what I did. So pretty much similar settings. I just adjusted the threshold. And this is the counter snare. Now this I had to compress because basically this perk had a lot of high end and it was just blaring, but it had like no body to it. And if you tried turning it up, you would get like no volume out of it because the high end was just breaking through so hard. It was peaking so bad. So I had to heavily compress this. I mean, threshold is almost all the way down. Ratio is pretty much the same. Quick attack, quick release. And I added a lot of gain back to it and I got a lot more volume out of it. And then just a soft clipper to make sure it's not peaking. And then this, I believe, is an open hat. Again, just added some high end, just like everything else. Just some high end to give it a little bit of crisp. And then another open hat. And that's pretty much all there is. So basically everything individually, you know, no matter what beat you do, nothing's ever going to be the same. You know, unless you're using the same drums and you're familiar with what you got to do with them. You know, you got to experiment with the EQs and stuff. A lot of the times with drums, you really don't have to remove too much unless it's like a kick or an 808 where it's going to conflict with the melody. But like I said, I'm very simple when it comes to drums. I don't like doing too much. Otherwise, you can start taking away a lot of the quality from it. And I don't like that. So I like to keep it simple, do the minimum, but clean it up. And then, yeah, so that's pretty much it. And my recommendation is just to always tweak things. If you hear muddiness, sometimes you have to solo out the 808 and the kick and the melody and figure out what it is. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you guys today. I'm not going to be doing any sort of mastering. That's its own separate thing. So hopefully you guys found something helpful with this. If you did, please drop a like. I'd really appreciate it. I would like to do more tutorials too. So if you guys would like to see how to do something else, just let me know. Again, if you guys wouldn't mind checking out my social medias, I'd greatly appreciate it. But other than that, again, hope this helped you guys out. And I'll see you guys in the next one.